We will start our next sessions. The first keynote speaker is Professor Dr. Fabrice. This session will be moderated by Mr. William, PhD. Please give them a warm applause.
Yes, thank you. For this keynote sessions, I will be the moderator. So this keynote session will be presented by Professor Fabrice. He is currently the full professor in Burgundy University in France and currently the director of Institute of Health and Analytics in University Technology Petronas, Malaysia. And the title of this talk is Machine Learning and Deep Learning Approach for Retinal Disease Diagnosis. And yeah, so Professor Fabrice will cover the basic pre-processing for machine learning using various feature extractions such as back-of features, back-of words, and anything else. And then he also will cover the deep learning technology to help diagnose the retinal disease. So without any further waiting, let's welcome Professor Fabrice.
Morning, everyone. Waiting for the slides. So let's start. Just before I go in the details of the topic, I just want to tell you who I am, okay? In case of we go for future collaboration. So I'm a full professor in France, and I was managing one research center, CNRS Research Center, from 2011 to 2016. And my background is mainly, I'm coming from computer vision, and I moved slightly from computer vision to medical imaging application. With some illustration here, I've been working a lot on retinopathy diabetes or diabetic macular edema, trying to find some disease inside the retina, as well as prostate cancer. So the whole idea was to do computer-aided diagnosis and a little bit on the brain imaging. And you will see that we found a pathway that whenever I want to find microaneurysm, which is in the eyes, at the end is the same as the microaneurysm inside the brain, so as long as you are talking about the shape. So we have been translating whatever we found in the eyes into the brain. And since 2016, I moved to the University Technology Petronas, so not far away from here, okay? Tak jauh, huh? Very close. So it's about Seri Iskandar, it's about 2 hours and a half of Kuala Lumpur, okay, in Perak. And I've been teaching over there, professor in electrical engineering. And 1 year ago, they changed the whole panorama of the research and they asked me to lead one of the institute. So that's the Institute of Health and Analytics. So mainly this is what we do. So we have one group doing brain science. This is the only group in Malaysia which is being recognized by the Ministry of High COE in brain. So they have the ICOE center. And then we have people doing augmented reality and people doing computer-aided diagnosis. So I still work on the retina images wherever I'm in Malaysia. Okay? So the work today, now let's move on into the work. I want to share the credit of the work with those who have been working with me over the past few years into this topic. So starting from one of my former PhD students now who is an associate professor in the US, with other master student and PhD students. So Sharif now is a postdoc in Oxford, some Indian student. So it's been a team of people working with me over the past few years, from students as well as to contributors which are either in the Oak Ridge National Lab in the US or Hong Kong Chinese University from Carroll, used to be working in SERI, Singapore Eye Research Institute. So I've been collaborating with those institutions over the past few years to get the data. Okay? So the whole idea is to diagnose pathology from the eye. Okay? And of course you would like to get a clear vision, not a vision like that if you have cataract, okay? Or glaucoma, or what we call AMD, age macular degenerescence, or diabetic retinopathy, okay? So today my talk will be mainly on the AMD and DR, okay? And those diseases, they are placed here because they happen to be on the retina, okay? On the photosensitive part of your eyes, okay? How you get information about this disease? You have many technology, okay? So regarding the image that we'll be focusing today, mainly fundus images, okay, just a snapshot into your eye, or the latest one, which are what we call SDOCT. So you get a 3D scanning from the retina. So you get information about many layers that you can get into your eye. Okay? And of course, you have nice and fancy equipment to obtain those images. Okay? So we'll start from the principle that all those images are being provided by those fancy equipments. Okay? So I get the raw data coming from the microscope. Okay? So we'll be focusing on these modalities. Okay? So if you make a zoom of the eyes, that's what you get. So we'll be focusing on this part, the retina, and mainly the fovea. Okay, this is where you have the photoreceptors. Okay, so here you get your photoreceptors getting the information from the light, and then they get the neurons. So this information goes to the nerve fiber layer, and this goes into your brain. Okay, so this nerve fiber layer, just to give a little information. The way the retina or the vessels are growing into the retina, because this is linked to the central nervous system, people are trying to predict disease inside the brain by looking into your eyes. Okay, that's why you can find papers which is the eyes an opening into the brain, a window to the brain. Okay, so a lot of papers have been published in how to look at how the vessels are growing, what are the bifurcation of the vessel, trying to predict stroke or other disease which are linked with the central nervous system. You can find good literature if you want to start working on retinal imaging. I would suggest to go one of these nice paper. So for those who are familiar, Michael Abramov is one of the leader in the field. He's one of the gentlemen of the University of Iowa who's an ophthalmologist, but he also got a degree in computer science. So he's got a PhD in computer science as well as in ophthalmology. So then he get the data and he can process the data. Malan Sonka, I don't know if he's still, but was the editor-in-chief of IEEE Transaction Medical Imaging. So these two guys are the leader in ophthalmology in the US. And then a couple other fellows which have published good paper to start with. Okay. So if you look at those where I gave a keynote about 3 years ago, okay, about these aspects. And 3 years ago, very few people were using deep learning. Okay, so these are the number of papers which were published in Scopus related to retina and fundus and DR. And you will see that this is growing exponentially. And the deep learning is also growing quite fast since Kaggle released a huge data set of fundus imaging about 3 years ago. Okay, so this is just the various statistics. But what I want to highlight is this. 2014, very few papers having deep learning application for fundus and deep learning. Diabetic retinopathy, you see, and this is stopped today, so we still have 4 or 5 more months to go. So you see the growth of deep learning within the field of retinal disease is growing. Unfortunately, I would say some of the application, as you will see on my final slide, for some of them is almost abyss, finished. They already get very good results. They released one latest paper 2 weeks ago in Nature Medicine from DeepMind, Google people. They can diagnose on SDOCT images about 20 pathologies, better than the ophthalmologists so far. So unfortunately, the field is going very fast. Okay, so let's see what we will go through. So as I said before, the idea is to go from machine learning to deep learning. So I will show you whatever we have done. This is a journey of whatever we have done over the last past 6-7 years. So some of the concept might look very trivial for you because this is just basic machine learning, extracting features and then putting that into SVM or random forest classifier. But this is what we have done, and then I will show you the frustration in the sense that whatever we have done during 5-6 years, then everything disappears when deep learning can. But I want to show you the progress. Okay? So a general introduction, which you might be familiar, especially in Asia. If you look at Asia, this is the increase of diabetic people. You know, you put too much sugar in the coffee. That's why every time I come here, I say, kopi tanpa gula. Okay? No more sugar in the coffee. But it's the case, Malaysia is the same. The growth of the population having diabetes is going exponentially in South Asia. And with diabetes, you develop disease in the kidney, in the head, but also in the eyes. Okay? And when diabetes affects your eyes, you don't notice it right away. And sometimes when you start to notice it, it's too late. So that's why people have been going through what we call screening program. Whenever you have diabetes, they ask you to go to see the ophthalmologist. Okay? But the prevalence is very little in the sense that you might have diabetes, but you might not have retinopathy diabetes. So that's how the computer-aided diagnosis came into place. Why do you need to see an ophthalmologist if you have nothing? Okay? Why do you need to see an expert in the eyes if you get nothing in the eyes? So the whole idea was, can we replace the ophthalmologist by a machine? So at least the machine will be able to say, okay, you need to see the ophthalmologist, you don't need to see the ophthalmologist. Okay? So a screening program. This has been going on in US, in Europe, it's going on also in India, okay, and might soon come also into Asia. So anytime you're gonna get diabetes, they will tell you, okay, you have to refer to the ophthalmology department. But what will happen is the ophthalmology department will process your images without the need of an ophthalmologist. The ophthalmologist will come later on. Okay. So I just to show you the effect of the retinopathy diabetes. So if you know in advance, you can use photolaser coagulation. Whenever you have microneedle, okay, you can shoot those microneedle with powerful laser, very focused, and then it will burn the microneedle. And if you burn the microneedle, there is no leakage of blood into the retina. Okay, so that's the whole idea. Can we detect the disease earlier on? So the disease goes through several stages. It starts with microneedle. Okay, so that's what we call mild retinopathy diabetes. Okay, so you see those microneedle. There are these little tiny mini spot here, and you would like the computer to find them automatically without generating too many false positives. Huh? That's what I used to tell my students. They come and, I mean, if you're familiar for the medical imaging, we usually grade our performance using the accuracy, but also using what we call sensitivity, specificity. Okay? So if you threshold the image, you put a low threshold, all the pixels becomes white, you find all the microism. So very high sensitivity, but your specificity is very low because you generate a lot of false positive. So you want the machine to find only the microneedle, not to find the noise. Okay? Then you can have the other lesion, which are the hemorrhages. Okay, cottonwool spot. So here you have hemorrhages coming in. So you would like to find also those lesions. And then at the end, whenever it starts to be proliferative, okay, so that means the disease has been going to the later stage. Then you have those exudates, okay, which are release of lipids into your retina. Okay, and of course remember that in the retina you have the photoreceptive cells. So if on the top of those photoreceptive cells you have lipids, then they don't get the light coming into them. Okay, so there is no signal coming to your brain but that. So that's why you see a blurry vision. And then at the end, whenever you have these, you grow some new vessels. Okay, that's what we call the neovascularization. So you see all these new vessels growing, the very thin one, and because your eyes needs to function, so some of them are blocked. So the brain is sending a signal, say, oh, I still need oxygen to function, I still need to bring food to my eye. So you are growing vessels, but those vessels, they are not meant to be, so they are very fragile, and they will break. And if they break, then you get hemorrhages into the eye. Okay? So you don't want to reach this stage, that's the later stage, okay? Whenever you do proliferative retinopathy diabetes. Okay? So the way we usually grade the DR, diabetic retinopathy, grade 0, nothing, perfect. Grade 1, you start to have some microneedle, you see? Few microneedle, okay, hemorrhages. Then you start to get grade 2, you start hemorrhages, or microneedle, and neovascularization, not much, and so forth. So this is the grading system that the ophthalmologists are using, okay, and this is what the machine learning is using. So before deep learning, what we used to do was lesion-based. I put an image, I'm targeting microneedle. I put an image, I'm targeting hemorrhages. I put an image, I'm targeting exudate. I put an image, I'm targeting other lesions. You will see that now, you put an image, and you are targeting a score, a grade. Deep learning extracts all the information for you. So the later stage of retinopathy diabetes, from time to time, whenever the lipid will be spread into the retina, you can create what we call diabetic macular edema. Okay, that means, you see here, the layers are being swelling, so you get an edema into the layer, okay, which you might not see using a fundus image, because the fundus image is just an image, a snapshot, so you have a projection of the 3D, okay? So that's why we need to use this kind of images, SD-OCT images, which are 3D information of the retina, okay? So that's the image we'll be processing for DME, okay? Diabetic macular edema. And the diabetic macular edema is usually linked with the exudate. So whenever you have exudate, you can see them in the fundus images. Whenever the exudate are not here, you can have DME, but you cannot see with the fundus image. Okay, that's why we use SD-OCT images. And the latest disease, which we have been looking at, is what we call the age-related macular degeneration. So this one, as it's being stated in the title, come with the age. You have nobody having 25 years old having these, but whenever you start to get age, okay, you have some deposit coming under the last layer of the retina, okay, and those deposits, if you take a picture, they are yellowish like that. Okay. So this is another disease, but this one is called AMD, age macular degeneration. So fundus images have been there for quite a long time. You go on the internet, you can find nice databases, okay? And those databases, they have been built, for example, to find the vessel. So you can compare your algorithm to see how my algorithm is doing vessel segmentation. Because as I said before, the information you get from the vessel of the eyes, they are also linked with the information of the vessel in your brain. So people have been using vessel information. What is the curvature of my vessel? What is the ratio of the vein versus the artery to link with potential disease in the brain? So vessel, no issues. Exudate, no issues. And then of course sometimes I will talk a bit about what we call glaucoma. Okay, glaucoma, you have pressure inside your eyes, and the pressure is pushing onto your optic disc. So if you look at the ratio of the optic cuff versus the optic disc, it will change due to the pressure. Okay, so we have databases to try to see if your algorithm can find the optic disc, and so forth and so forth. One of the first challenge which was set on the scientific community, that's what we call the ROC challenge, ROC, Retinopathy Online Challenge, where they were providing images, fundus images with microalgorithm. They were releasing the ground truth for some of them. Then you will submit your results, and then they will compare your algorithm with the state of the art. We just released this one. We organized a challenge in the IEEE ISB conference last year in the US. It's a IDRID. It's a database coming from India. So we have about 500 images which have been annotated pixel-wise. So if you want to run your algorithm. And then you can find new one which have just been released from China, 50,000 images. Okay? And Kaggle challenge, they are still available, 35,000 images. So now, like for this challenge, most of the competitor, they trained their deep model onto the Kaggle challenge, and then they came to test onto our images. So out of the paper which was submitted to this conference, more than 90% they were using deep learning approach. Okay? SD-OCT, very few so far. Very few data set available. Okay? That's why there are very, very few papers still based on deep learning on SD-OCT images. One of the leaders is FirstU in the US, Duke. So they released the first data set. They are still releasing from time to time. Okay? So why we are few? Because whenever you take SD-OCT images, you are taking a volume. So one patient is 128 images. So if you ask the ophthalmologist to annotate 128 images per patient, then they will say, no problem, it's going to take me a few hours. And in the US, you know, 1 hour of one ophthalmologist, you're talking about 1,000 USD. So whether you have a lot of money to pay those guys to annotate the images, otherwise you don't get the annotation. So very few yet, but this is going to come. So whenever you do screening, you want to be sure that the whole idea is pretty much like crowdsourcing. You want the images to be taken at one site, to be sent somewhere, unprocessed, and then you give back the answer. So you want to be sure that any images which is being sent through the system is of good quality. Okay? So we started to develop a system which was mainly in Tennessee, okay, with HO. So that was about 6-7 years ago. The whole idea was to have a screening program. So we had like little places where people could come, And just by themselves, they were taking a snapshot of their eyes. Like you go for photo ID, it was photo IDs of your eye. And then the image was sent through the network, okay? That's the places where the cameras, the fundus image were in, okay? So that's the whole idea, okay? Take a fundus camera, but before you send everything into the system, you want to be sure that it's a good image. Because this was left alone. And you know, in the US, you have a lot of kids. They will come, they will take pictures of the body, not of the eyes, and send through the system. So you want to make a quality check of whatever is being sent through the system, it's actually the eye. So we made a quality assessment to be sure that you don't get any kind of those images coming in. Okay, and you get only eye images. And of course, if you have eye images, you get vessel. So the whole idea was to build a descriptor based on how we can see the vessels. So we were segmenting the vessels, taking a descriptor on the vessel, taking a descriptor on the color information, and we put that into a super vector machine, okay, and then we release the result. Okay. So this is just to show you, that's the quality of the image using our metrics, 0.95. So this image can go through the system, this one cannot. And we use this also with technician. You know, technician, they were taking images at first, and this is how the technicians are improving over time, just by having the score of the machine. So he was also helping the technician to take the images. Okay? So I'm talking about 6 years ago, and you'll see that now, whenever we're reaching 90%, now people get almost 100% with deep learning. Okay? So now the image is good, it goes through the system. So whenever you're in the system, as I said before, most of the techniques 5 years before deep learning, let's say before AlexNet, okay, before AlexNet and VGG, most of the techniques were based on lesion. You detect the lesion, you build a classifier, so you build a model of these lesions, and then you take a decision. Okay? So the first one was to find the microneedle, because the microneedle is the earliest sign of diabetic retinopathy. So you remember these images I showed you before. Do you know what the microneedle? See, huh? It's not that easy. Microneedle is about 50 micron. 50 micron is about the thickness of your hair. Okay, that's what you would like to find. Okay, so here they are. Okay, so the whole idea is to build a system who can find these without generating too many false positives. Okay, so see, we use the information that supposedly microneedles are coming from the blood, huh? So they should have a color which is close to the blood color, so they are red. And then microneedles, they have a specific shape, they're supposed to be round. So we use the information that they are round and potentially red to process the images. Okay. So we project the images into what we call the radon space. Okay. So we take a radon transform of the images, we extract features within the radon space. So that's the microneedle, we center window that, and that's the image of the microneedle in the radon space. And we're trying to find this nice ridge, okay, of the microneedle. Then whenever you have the vessels, this is a vessel. So you see it's still a ridge, but different shape. So that's the whole system we built. Okay. So you get your set of images, you extract some information, and then of course you feed this information into the machine learning. The problem with this one is you don't have any images where you don't have no microneedle. You know what is a microneedle, but what is a non-microneedle? You don't know. Okay? So we train the system, okay? And so we label some of the images, microneedle, non-microneedle. We train the system, and then whenever we're generating false positive, we use with those 4 candidates to reinforce our model. That's an example. That's the first decision of our model. So whenever it's dark, this is the highest probability of being a microneedle. Okay? Those are actually the true microneedle. Then we were selecting these because these were false positive. So you click on one of these and you retrain your model. So you do that 2 or 3 times, and then at the end, your final model is built. Okay? That's the testing image. That's the true microneedle, that's the false positive. We still generate a lot of false positive, but if you compare our results, okay, those are our results, this method. Okay. This was back then the state of the art. That's the sensitivity versus the average false positive per image. And these results here is just a combination of all the results. The challenge organizer, they get all the model and they build a voting scheme from those models. So if you remove this one, which is a voting scheme, back then in 2011 and 12, this one was the best technique. Okay? Then we further refine. So refine in the sense that we augmented the pre-processing, okay? We did the local space estimation, and then we still extracting features, but instead of extracting only random features, we're extracting surf features and scale space features, and then we do the classification. So still the same principle. Your microneedle, they are here, okay? So because we know they are round, I don't know if you're familiar with the Asian matrix, okay? So we were processing the image, and then, so you take the second order derivative of a Gaussian filter image, okay? So that's your Asian matrix, and if you have something which is circular, if you look at the eigenvalues of your Asian matrix, your eigenvalue should be very similar. Because there is no privileged direction, you have something which is totally isotropic. So we look at the Asian matrix, okay? So whenever you have a peak, potentially you have a round chain. So we took some criteria from the Asian matrix, and then we can localize our microneedle. True microneedle, false microneedle. But still, very less false positive. And then whenever they were potentially pre-localized, then we're extracting other features. So surf features, random transform, scale space features, and then do the classification. Okay. We optimize, as I said, we need to go through Asian matrix. So the Asian matrix, once again, is first you convolve the image with the Gaussian. And as we know, the Gaussians get a standard deviation. So what is the sigma value of the standard deviation? So we optimize what could be the optimum standard deviation of my Gaussian. Okay. So first we do through an optimization scheme of finding what is the best Gaussian. And then whenever I find my best Gaussian, I extract my features. And I feed that into my classifier, again with the surf features. So 64 features from surf, 5 features from my Gaussian estimation using my scale space analysis, okay, as well as the random transform. Same data set, the log transform, and do the results. And I guess you can still check for feature extraction method is still one of the best techniques released by Kedira. Where is Kedira? Kedira Lab. Okay, 2014. I told you before, the only thing we are doing is trying to find a round shape. Whenever you have a round shape in the eyes, or whenever you have a round shape into the brain, it's the same approach, except we made an extension for 3D. Because here we have a volume, we have MRI images, they are 3D. So we made the extension, and then we were able to publish this paper for localizing cerebral microbleeds into brain images. Okay, so just an extension of fundus to brain. Then we move to macular edema. Okay. Same principle. This time you want to find exudate into fundus images. So you use the information from the color. There is no specific shape. Okay, but there is a specific texture which is different from the rest of the eyes. So we use information about the edges, texture, as well as the color. And then you just build, once again, a big machine learning system where you first do some pre-segmentation, then you use texture information based on wavelet transform, some color information, you feed that into a super vector machine or random forest machine, and then you output some result, okay? So that's just the processing. Most of the time, whenever you process fundus images, you use the green channel only, because it's wherever you have the best contrast. So using the green channel, you can do a median filtering to do the background estimation, some morphological to be sure you're going to remove the optical disc, background subtraction. From those images, then you can process. Background information, you can see depending on which side of the threshold you go, you can either highlight the vessel or you can highlight the potential lesions here. So then you have the original image, background subtraction, remove the optic nerves as well as the vessels. We run some edges detection, and then we extract some information. So those are the exudate probability map. And on the top of these, we extract more features, and we plug that into a classifier. Okay? And those are the. Okay? The beauty of the techniques is we build the model in some databases. That's our own database. and we test it on different databases. So it's very cross-platform. We are not cheating in the sense that the images are coming from the same microscope, from the same patient, and so forth. No, we build a model, and we say our model is okay, and we use other images coming from different platforms, and we test our model. So you see, trend on this one, tested on Mesido dataset. And still an AUC of 0.89. And the paper, if you're familiar with medical imaging analysis, has been published in Medical Imaging Analysis, which with IEEE TMI is one of the best journals of the field. Then we start to go further. We say, okay, we can find microrhythm, we can find exudate, but what happens if I have exudate, for example, and Drunzen, which are linked with AMD? Can I still make the difference? So we have been working on that. So the whole idea was, for this one, we use bag of words approach, okay, and sparse coding. So first you have to pre-process the image. Same as before, you remove the background information. And then after that, we do feature extraction. So we used to run dense feature extraction using surf. And then we do bag of words. So I don't know if you're familiar with bag of words, but it's just a projection technique within the clustering space to reduce the dimension. If you are using surf, for example, you get 64 dimension. So that means your classifier should be in the 64 dimension space, which is quite big. We need a lot of data to fit this space. So the whole idea is to cluster those information to go down to a lower space, okay? And we do that with what we call bag of words, okay? It's because this is coming from the people doing semantic analysis in text. You want to find the occurrency of a word. So the words will constitute your dictionary. Okay? So we do bag of words approach. So you see, it's just the clustering techniques. But it helps you to go from a very high dimension space to a lower dimension space. And in this lower dimension space, then you build a classifier, which can be whatever you want, but most of the time we were using support vector machine or random forest. Okay? So to build a data set, we pick images coming from various data sets. Okay? So Stair, Drive, HMD, Mesido, HLF, Corporate National Lab, a lot of images coming from various microscopes, okay, and various people in the world, very different ethnicities. And then we constitute the two training set, one to build the dictionary, one to test, and vice versa. So similar to a cross-validation with two folds. So you can see that we have normal images, Drunzen, exudate, normal, Drunzen, exudate. And the whole idea at the end is I give you the images and you're supposed to take the decision. So this is the result we obtained. So either you build one dictionary per feature space or multiple dictionaries. And this is the result we obtained. That means we missed one image. 99.5, that means we are pretty high in accuracy. We even reach 100% sometimes. And this placed us the Best Paper Student Award at the SPA Medical Imaging Conference for Ibrahim Sadek. I think it was in 2015 or 16. Then we keep on moving. That was the exudate on the fundus image, but as I told you before, the exudate, before they arrive, sometimes you have some cyst which you cannot see in the fundus image. So we have to use the SD or CT imaging. Okay? So we developed a pipeline where you have to pre-process those images. Remember, those images, they are volume. So you have 128 of those images per patient. So you have to pre-process those images. Then you have to decide whether you want to implement your processing in 2D or 3D. Okay, so that's what we call the mapping. For those familiar with, let's say, feature extraction, you know you can do LBP, but you can do LBP top using the Z dimension or using the temporal dimension. For us, it was the Z dimension in 3D. So you have to decide whether you want to do 3D or 2D. Okay, and then you decide how you want to represent your features. Because whenever you are doing LBP, and then later on we use HOG, histogram of gradient, the feature dimension is very high. So how do you want to reduce the feature dimension? Do you want to do PCA? Do you want to do bag of words? So we play with all those various strategies. So that means a lot of experiment to be run. What is, for those familiar with local binary pattern, you know that you can select how many neighbors you want, what is the size of the radius. Okay. Same for repeater. PCA, how many principal components are you going to keep? Are you projecting in 1D, 2D, 3D, ND? So how many principal components you want to keep? Bag of words, how many words you want to constitute your dictionary? So a lot of experiments were run, and we had to compare our results. So back then, 2015, the leading was Venusen, and I guess you can check now. They are these two guys. They are from Radboud University in Netherlands, and they are the one publishing most of the paper in deep learning applied to the images, fundus images and SDOCT images. So they are the leader in the field from Radboud. But back then they were not using deep learning, but we had to compare techniques. So we re-implemented their techniques. So their whole technique was nice in a sense that first you get an image, and they detect interest point. Image, interest point, just by taking the gradient information. So you take the gradient, but then that means you have a lot of those points. So they do a subsampling. On any of those points, then they do a patch extraction. So they just take a small window around each of those interesting points. It's a 9 by 9 image. But whenever you have a 9 by 9 image, it's nothing more than an 81 by 1 vector. Okay? So they put this image, put 81. So if you have n of these, then you have a big vector. Okay? And then they do PCA to reduce. Then whenever they have the projection in the new dimension done by the principal component analysis, they still do bag of words. So they do a clustering with 100 words. And then they classify. Okay? So the previous technique I showed you, we compared to the technique because in 2015 that was the leading technique. We used two data sets. The one that we call the SERI, which we released. We call it SERI because it was obtained at the Singapore Art Research Institute, and the Duke from the, Duke University in the US. And this is what we obtained. Okay, so these were the previous technique, and this is what we obtained using LPP and using HUD. Okay, so I want you to remember those figures. 80.5% for the sensitivity, 87.5% for the specificity. Okay? This took us about 3 years. You know, you have to pre-process the image, investigate which filters you want to extract and everything. Okay? This is the best performance we obtained, and we published the summary of all those techniques in ICPR 2016. Okay? Then came the revolution. It's what they call the big deep learning or big data revolution. Okay? So then whatever we have done before, we forgot. Yeah, frustrating, very frustrating. Okay? And I will show you the result we obtained. Whenever you are talking about deep learning and you have some expert who's gonna do some keynote in the afternoon and tomorrow, okay? You can do supervised learning, unsupervised learning, reinforcement learning. In the community of medical imaging, most of the time we're doing CNN. For those processing signal, they are using a lot of RNN because they have the temporal information and they're using the LSTM. But in our case, we are using CNN. How many of you are familiar with CNN? Not all of you, so I'm just going to give a quick glimpse of what is CNN, okay? Very, very, very short, okay? CNN is just a big neural network, okay? But the neuron in the first layer, they are doing a convolution. Like we were doing before. You know, you convolve an image with a filter, and depending on which filter you put, you might extract edges. Okay? So the whole idea of CNN is you are doing a convolution, except that what is inside your kernel, the system itself learns. So the beauty of the system is you put the image, and you let the system learn by itself. And it will learn through the process of backpropagation. Okay? So you have a filter which is going to do a convolution. And of course you can implement a lot of filters. Every time you implement one filter, you will generate what we call a feature map. Okay? So you do the convolution, and of course you have to generate some non-linearities into your system. So we use an activation function which is bringing the non-linearity. And for those having done the neural network before, this is what you used to have with the tangent, hyperbolic tangent, or the sigmoid function. Okay. Whenever you are doing deep learning, so input image, convolution, the most important point is this one. You do nothing. The kernel They are learned by the system itself. The only thing you are defining is what is the size of my kernel. Do I want a 5 by 5, a 7 7, 9 by 9? And even so, the people from Oxford with VGG, they show us that if we do 3 by 3 is enough. Okay? So we're stuck on 3 by 3. Then the non-linearity, for those doing deep learning, you know that now we are using the ReLU, because the other one we have problem with the vanishing gradient, because the system is very, very deep, so the gradient is very strong at the beginning, and is very, very small at the end, so it takes 4 ages to converge. So now we're using the ReLU. And then we do a spatial pooling, which can be done by max pooling or average pooling to reduce the dimension of the image. So those are the basics step that you need to have when you do CNN. And of course, for those who are familiar from the field, in between now you have dropout, data augmentation. Okay? But these at least are the basic steps that you need to understand to do CNN. So, this is a CNN. And this was the first one. I like to show this one because this guy is French. That's Yann LeCun. Okay? He developed this whenever he was in the US. That's the first, that's what we call the net. That was the first ever CNN. And back then it was used to recognize a unwritten character. So the zip code, whenever you're sending a letter to someone or writing a big check, okay, you need someone to recognize if you put a 9 or if you put a 1, because the amount of money coming on your bank account is different. So that was the CNN. So you see, filtering. So here he defined 6 filters. Then here is defined another 6 filters, 16 filters, 16 filters, and then at the end you always need to go through classification. So you have what we call a dense neural net, similar to the formal neural net that you used to see whenever you're doing neural network. Okay, that's a convolution neural network. First one. So we have the CNN. So then you take, this is one of the guru, Andrej Karpathy. So that's the recipe he gives whenever you want to do deep learning. Okay. So how do I know what architecture to use? First thing, A, don't be a hero. That means take whatever works based on the ImageNet contest, okay? Download it and use it, okay? And believe me, it works. So the first thing you have to do is to track down whatever they are doing in ImageNet. You take the latest release, okay, and you use it. You have 2 ways of using it. I will show you. So just an example, AlexNet 2012, VGG 2014, ResNet 152 layers. Okay? But the trick with ResNet, if you look at the number of parameters, you have less parameters in ResNet than you have in VGG. So the dimension space when you do the optimization procedures is smaller here than here. Right now people are using, and I didn't put the Google Net, but now people are using Inception module version 4 along with the ResNet. So that means you have some Inception module into ResNet architecture. So you see, 2012 to 2015, and these are the errors made by the system. Karpathy carried out an experiment where he was using the, so for those who are not familiar with the IL-SVRC, it's the imageless contest. You have 1.2 million image, you have 1,000 class, and you're supposed to say this image contains a dog, this image contains a cat, contains a car, and so forth, okay? Then he asked people to do it. That's the human expert, okay? That's the ResNet. That means if you take on average, the system is doing better than human expert finding a cat, a dog, a car, okay? If you look at the memory or the number of parameters in the model, which at the end, if you are familiar with CNN, the number of parameters in the model is nothing more than the number of weight for your neurons to work. VGG, 155 million. You go to the Inception V4, so it's the Google Net plus the ResNet, okay? You have about 50 million parameters, so a ratio of 3 between these guys. But that's the performance accuracy of these versus these. Okay, so if you have to do something now, and if you follow Andrej Karpathy recipe, you download this one and you play with this one. Okay? You can start tomorrow. The beauty with deep learning is most of the time, everything is released on GitHub. So as long as you know how to use TensorFlow and Keras, tomorrow you get the same performance as those guys. That's the beauty of deep learning. But it goes very fast. If you wait the day after tomorrow, somebody else comes with better results. So, no, that's true. This is very interesting in the sense that we can compete with those guys as long as we have the machine, huh?
Yes.
In the GPU. So, two ways. The first way, you download the model, then you cut the last layer, so it can be FC1, FC2, FC3, depending if you're using AlexNet or GoogleNet. Okay, GoogleNet has only one layer of fully connected at the end. And then what you do is you're using this guy here to be your feature vector. You remember I was using SURF, 64 dimension, or I was using LBP, 256 dimension. Now let's assume I'm using VGG, I will have 4096 dimension. This is my feature vector. So the only thing I do is I put my image, put it through there, extract my features. But remember, the dimension space is quite big. So it's easy to find a nice border, but we don't know how much it would generalize. Huh? So we have to pay attention to that. But still, very easy to do. The other recipe is you cut, and of course your system, for example, you want to address a two-class system, so you have to change the last layers because all those models, they have been developed for 1,000 class. So you change the last two layers to put two class. And you retrain the system using your own label. Okay? So you can freeze those guys, so there is no update of the weight for those guys, and you update only the weights of the final layers. Okay? So, if I go back to whatever we used to do before, you remember I showed you how people have been doing screening. So when I want to do screening, I need to be sure that the image is of good quality. And we were extracting the vessel, a lot of preprocessing. This year, 2018, automated quality assessment of color fundus image for the telemedicine. Ah, done, 100%. Okay, so I'm out of the play. Huh? So we play 1 or 2 years on trying to extract the vessel, trying to find information on the vessels, make something which is robust. They come with deep learning, 100% on 2 data sets. So that means that the techniques works. Very, very frustrating. You can read this one. This one has just been released, huh? March 2018. This is a huge system done in China. 50,000 images. And I will show you the latest one in Nature Medicine, where the release. So you have a lot of nice recent paper which shows you that if you want to compete, unfortunately you have to go in deep learning. Okay? Unfortunately, if you don't do deep learning, the result you might get will be, unfortunately for you, a little bit lower. If they are a little bit lower, you submit your paper to a nice journal, then the guys cannot publish. If you want your paper to be in Q1, you have to show better result than the other one. Even so, there is no more math, you're just tweaking the parameters. Okay, how many sample in my mini batch, what is my learning rate, what is my momentum, but still, that's, for now, this is what we have to do. So we have been doing the same. So we try the 3 approaches, okay, so the transfer learning, the fine-tuning, and building one system from scratch. So this one we built it, and we call it OCTNet, because it was built to process OCT images, okay? So same system, we have a set of filters. So here we are doing a lot of convolution. So 32, then we again 32, 32, 32. Then we do the max pooling, so down sampling. And then we go for 64 and so forth and so forth. And we have some dropout. And in between we had batch normalization and everything. So we built our own system based on our own set of images. Okay? And that's what we obtained. So we moved from 87.5 to 93.5. So good enough, huh? We were happy. But then I told one of my students, oh, remember the formula of Karpati, don't be a hero. So let's go back. Let's go back to this one, but let's replace it with any deep learning algorithm we can find. Okay? So we use AlexNet, VBGNet, GoogleNet, Inception. And we did feature extraction, and then we were either building. Here you can do a lot of things. You can build a model based on AlexNet, build a model on VGG, build a model on Google, combine those models, or extract the features for all of them, combine those features, sample the features in PCA or Microforge. You can do a lot of things. So we have been doing a lot of things. And then, because we are doing feature extraction, you have to put the classifier at the end. So SVM, you can play with the kernel of the SVM. KNN, you can play with the value of K, and you can do random forest where you can play with the number of trees. Okay? So we try all this. So we have to do the pre-processing, but it was very, very similar to what we have done before. And that's the results we were obtaining. I show you the better results. So AlexNet, for those who are familiar with AlexNet, VGGNet. So AlexNet, we play with FC6, FC7, FC8. VGG, we play with this. So either you get a 4096 feature vector, whether you have a 1000 feature vector, whether you combine everything. Okay. And for GoogleNet's got only one at the end, with the so the FC of GoogleNet, 1000 plus. Okay. So we have been playing with all of these, combining all of them, and that's what we obtained. So we were here whenever we designed our system. Then we have done some transfer learning using SVM, transfer learning using random forest. So we were able to boost the sensitivity to 100%. Specificity is still not that high, but still. So you see here we spent about 3 years. Here we spent about 3 months. Yeah, unfortunately. And then we said, okay, let's combine everything. Okay, so yeah, I can build the model, and then I can make a majority vote. If this AlexNet is telling me there is a disease, this one is telling there is no disease, and this one is telling me there is disease, then I take the majority voting, and I see what I get. Okay? Even so, when you look in details, whatever feature they extract similar features. So the decision should be very similar, but because they output different results on the ImageNet challenge, they still have a slight difference. So we build 3 models, and we take the majority voting of the models. And then you can do also the combination of the features. Then you can reduce the combination of the features, and you can plug into. And that's what we obtain. So fusion of features, now we move to 93.75 everywhere. Sensitivity, specificity, and accuracy. Okay? And then we get even better result when we combine with PCA. Okay. So we are reaching almost the 100%. And we are still doing transfer learning. Then we say, okay, let's do fine tuning. Karpati said we can do both. So we do both. So we have been doing the transfer learning using the ResNet 101, which combine the ResNet plus the inception module of GoogleNet. Okay? So we use the inception v3. Yes, now you can use the v4. And that's what we get. Okay? So that means on our data set, I'm not saying that we have to generalize yet, because sometimes whenever you're using those big decision space, you can do some overfitting. So we are still investigating, but at least whenever I compare these with the previous results. We are doing the same way. We do what we call leave one patient out. I'm building my model. If I have 32 patients, 16 with disease, 16 without disease, I take 15 and 15 to build my model. I test on the 2 remaining ones. Okay, that's how I get all my data. And that's how I compare all the evolution over the past few years. So whenever we were getting 80% 5 years ago with nice features, now at least on this data set we reach 100%. Okay? So that's the final result. So Perdomo et al., it's us building the OCT net, and this is what we get with transfer learning and everything. And we are not surprised because we went further. What we did is we compared the OCT net with any other technique. So we took the OCT net and we applied it to the ImageNet. And you get very good results also. That means because those systems, what they do is they extract features, combine features. So our system built from scratch was not better than AlexNet or VGG or any others, which are much, much deeper and are combining much more hierarchical level of features. Okay? And of course, there is much more. If you go in the literature, Biomedical Optics Express just released. For those who are familiar, this is what we call the unit shape. Okay? Encoder, decoder. So then you can do segmentation. So right now they have segmentation map. So you bring the input image, that's the output image. The way they do it, they combine 2 things. They have a first network, which connects right the retina layers, and then they train a new network with the input image, the retina layers, of course your label, output the segmentation. Okay? So now you can feed any image into this system. It will give you segmentation of what we call the cystoid. Same for the vessel. This is whatever we published recently. Okay, you can do vessel segmentation using UNet. And then whenever you have the vessel segmentation, you can measure the bifurcation. If you have information about the bifurcation, you can relate it to any disease which might appear in the brain. Okay? And once again, this, if you have a powerful machine, it's a couple days of work. Not a couple months, not a couple years. As long as you have a good GPU. Glaucoma, same. Whenever you have glaucoma, that is your normal eyes. This is the eyes with glaucoma. So you see here you have a pressure. So this pressure will push onto your optical nerve. So then this optical nerve will change a bit in shape. If you measure the ratio of the optic cup versus the optic disc, this will change. So one of the parameters that people have been doing is measuring these two shapes here. Okay? So we built one system which is going to be presented in BKI next week. Okay? Where we put the input image, we built the first network which extracts the optic disc and the optic cup. Then we feed this system into another layers where we extract features from that, so the size, the ratio, the eccentricity, and then we have a multi-layer perceptron to say suspicious or glaucoma. Okay, this will be presented next week, but we obtained better results than previous results. And then I thought I was happy. I said, okay, maybe we can even publish a good paper. But then I found one just released in IEEE Transaction Medical Imaging, where they actually get even better results. Okay. So that's some of the results they obtained with their system, where they gently do the segmentation of the two. You can find many others. The latest one I want to highlight is this one, just released in Nature Medicine. This is the team of people from Google. This is DeepMind. Okay, so kind of the best person doing machine learning or artificial intelligence with the most powerful machine. Okay, they were able to diagnose pathologies, more than 40 pathologies based on SDOCT images, and then they compare the result with ophthalmologists of 3 years experience, 5 years experience, 15 years experience, 20 years experience. They beat the ophthalmologists. For the ophthalmologists to get the same results, they needed the SDOCT images, the fundus images, as well as some semantic annotation from previous report. That means, on average, the machine is doing much better than the ophthalmologist, and they are moving towards to get this FAA approval to deploy the system in the US. But I want to quote the last one. Okay. It is important to remember that current medical knowledge is derived from decades of observational data gathering, hypothesizing, and validation through clinical research. So one cannot simply take the findings of deep learning system, okay, as the absolute inaccuracy. Because we obtain very good results on our set of data, but we want to be sure that whatever we get will generalize very well, okay? And we want to relate to what is happening into the body. So it's good in one way for publication, and I encourage you to go with deep learning if you want to compare your results. But at the end, whenever you are processing with medical data, you need to be sure that it is doing very well, huh? Because whenever the system will be in place, there will be no more human at the end. And the system will take the decision, so you want to be sure that at the end it takes a very good decision. And I guess that's my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you for Professor Fabrice for the interesting talk, and we will open for some questions to Professor Fabrice. Is there any questions? Yes. Please.
I have a question here.
Oh, yes. Yeah, let's one by one. Please first.
Thank you. My name is Wawan from AI R&D Center, Binus University. In the last slide, you told us that we need to we need to assess the deep learning model so that it is consistent with medical knowledge. So in your opinion, how do we can do that so that it's consistent? Thank you.
That's a good question. To be consistent, that's why the leading team most of the time is they have the, let's say, if you take the colleagues from the US, Michael Abramov, he's an ophthalmologist as well as a computer science guy. Us, we are mainly computer science people, we are processing data. So we are just comparing ground truth, which is being provided, so the label, and the decision of our model. But at one point you have to relate to the pathology and to the patient. So that's what they are saying. It's saying the machines are doing very well, but before deploying any of those machines in the real life, you need to be sure how they relate with the clinical. Because whenever you build the machine, if it's imbalanced whenever you do it, or if there is a pathology which does not exist yet, for example, then the machine will not know. So you need to be sure that any times you keep an ophthalmologist. The meaning is you need to keep an ophthalmologist in the loop, in the sense that you need this machine to help, not to make the ophthalmologist disappear.
Yeah.
For example, they will be very useful for screening. If you go to India, you have a huge population. So you want to be sure that you potentially help all the people. So those who need to see the ophthalmologist, they go through screening. Because let's say for the first symptom, micronoidum. If you miss 1 or 2 micronoidum, so you say, okay, there is no retinopathy diabetic, this is not, how to say, it's not so important in the sense that people can recount for the screening 6 months later. The disease will not go that fast. So it's better to miss some of them, but at least to be sure that those having a lot of microneedle, they can be seen by an ophthalmologist. So you do for screening. But before taking any decision where the machine will be, you go into the room, you put your eyes, and then you say, okay, oh, you get nothing or you get something. Well, we need to be sure that whatever we do works 99.99999 all the time. That's what it means.
Thank you.
I'm Anohar Pai from India. I liked your presentation, very nice flow as far as presentation is concerned. And in the course of your presentation, you brought in a point that there is a roadblock for research on ophthalmology, because at the end you achieve 100% what is called accuracy and sensitivity, because there are many young researchers are working in diabetic retinopathy, and of course they might not have in the developing countries where you need high computing power, which may not be available. And at the same time, if people like Google work for this type of problems, so I felt that there is a real block for researchers working in diabetic retinopathy.
I fully agree. Especially that right now, in whatever we have done on prostate, for example, just to give you an example, we try to submit to a good, we get very good results on the prostate. But it was 2 or 3 years ago, and we didn't have time to write the paper, so then we submit the paper. And then the chief editor look at the paper and say, oh, there is no CNN, not interesting for us. So I fully agree, deep learning is taking over, and you need the resource. I've been working with some colleagues in Canada. Any master student studying his master's got a Titan X board. So we are competing with people having huge support for big companies. And of course they invest a lot, because if you go in the US, the cost of health in the US is tremendous and everything is private. So if you can come up with a system that you sell, then you get billions. So there is no philanthropy behind. So those guys are trying to make money. So that's why for us it's very, very hard to compete in academia, because those guys are, so we need to find some pathologies which are not yet, let's say, bringing money to the system. Otherwise there is no way we can compete. This I fully agree. This is the frustrating part as being academician. The other part as an academician, the frustration is, what do we do with the nice model we need to teach to the student before? You don't need to go through Bayesian model, you don't need to go to Markov random field, you just need to say, okay, you have to tweak the parameters of this black box, and you get good results. Huh?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Lily Ayulandari from Venus University. Thank you for the interesting presentation. I think my question have connection with doctor from from India. That this model, is it feasible to be applied in the real health world? Because maybe there is equipment that we need to capture the data and apply the model to detect the condition of the patient. Thank you.
No, I guess most of it can be used, no issue, because most of those models, to train them, it takes big machine and everything, but whenever the model have been trained, to use the model, as long as you have machine powerful enough, I mean, you don't need a big machine to use those models. To train them, of course, if you do the training yourself, then you need the machine. For the other one, you even go in India, they have a lot of now center where they do telemedicine, in the sense that you go somewhere, the images are being sent to a platform where the decision is being taken by the ophthalmologist on the platform. So you can remove the ophthalmologist and have the system to take the decision. So this can be implemented, no way. In India, what they are doing, from what I've been following, is they go with low cost, because you have to go in the urban area, in the campaigns and everything, so they cannot bring the powerful fundus image microscope. So they go with portable cameras. So there are still room for these portable cameras. Like I know that, I mean, at least some of us, we are working on, if I give you a portable camera image, fundus image, I also give you the nice image coming from the fundus camera. Can I use a GAN from one to get to the other one? So people now are working with that. Can I build a model coming from generic adversarial network to build one image to the other one? So that's the new trend now.
Thank you.
Satu soalan lagi.
Hello, good morning. I am Aaron from Philippines. So my question is, thank you sir for your interesting presentation. You have presented an application of deep learning specifically on in the eyes. My question is there another medical imaging application that can we put our focus on?
Using deep learning?
Yes.
Well, I mean, if you go to, if you one guy from which we have been Verenusen, you know, the one we compare our results. I show you the name, and you can Google. It's coming. Okay, this guy here. I think you can check. 2016 or 17, he published IEEE Transaction Medical Imaging about the application of deep learning for medical imaging. And you can find prostate cancer, I mean segmentation, classification, any type of organs, multi-organs, based on deep learning. Okay, even for brain segmentation, deep learning application. So yes, the application is any field. Yes. Unfortunately, it's deep learning.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Oh, one more question.
Okay, I'm Jude from Venus International. Very interesting indeed. At first I wasn't into deep learning, however, after listening to your talk, I guess, yeah, tomorrow I'll start doing it. The only thing that's bothering me now is like, you mentioned that previously that you worked for like the past 3 years, and then when deep learning got in, it was done in 3 months. So looking forward, technology is moving so fast. What do you think is the future after deep learning?
I wish I would know, so otherwise I'd be very rich if I would know what's going to be after deep learning.
Oh, but based on
five,
research,
six-
perhaps.
5-6 years ago, nobody knew what we'll be doing deep learning. If you look at AlexNet 2012, so this has been going very, very fast over the past 6 years. So to tell you what's going to be after deep learning, I don't know, but I'm sure that we're going to use deep learning for the next 10 years, to be sure. Okay. But as I said before, you just need powerful, and you need data. You need data. But then at the end will be, for example, you still have a room for application using also semantic. Now they just don't want to only localize the lesions. They will also to be able to address the report. So if I find the lesion in the retina at this location, can I pre-write a report for the ophthalmologist? You see, I found the cyst, but where is based the cyst? What is the history of the patient? Can I tell the final disease, so the progression of the disease? So there's still a lot of stuff to do, and most of the time people are using LSTM now to process those information. So I think there is still potentiality for the next 10 years, I would say, at least, using deep learnings. Afterwards, if you look at the ophthalmology, for example, you still can make progress on the imaging system itself. Now the images I was showing you, if you go to the new microscope, what we call SD OCT angiography, you can see the vessel here. So you can see the choroidal vessel. So now people are running clinical data. So based on how those vessels are changing, how I can predict the potential disease. So there is still a lot of, the technology is also evolving a lot. So we will get new images. So don't worry, we can always apply whatever we have seen in deep learning to these new images. So there's still a lot of room. But we have to go with it. We cannot compete against. You have to go with it. So those who are not yet into deep learning, I will encourage you to learn Python because everything is under Python, most of it, and go on TensorFlow and Keras and move on.
Okay, thank you very much.
What is the OCT message in this one? What is the principle of OCT?
OCT is optical coherence tomography. So you are just looking at interference of the wave. You need, it's a microscope. Okay. So this is it's a built-in machine. You just buy it. But now with the new one they are using multiple wavelengths. They can see now up to the vessel here, under this layer, the choroidal vessels. So now they are looking at how those vessels are changing with the potential disease. So they have time points. So they have patients that they are following through years, and they look at how those vessels might change 3 years. Of course, patients are also taking, they are under treatment. So they are also looking at what is the effect of the treatment of those patients. And then of course in the next 10 years that we will give you one input image. You can see the vessel. Can you predict? Can you do some predictive analysis? That's a new trend with this new microscope. Thank you.
This is exclusive for the eyes.
No. The SD-OCT, you can have SD-OCT, for example, for the skin. If you want to see melanoma into the skin, you can. This is coming from physics. It's just a microscope using the interference. Okay, but then they can probe in the depths. It's just like you're sending a wave, optical wave, and then you look at the time it takes to come back, okay, and then you can infer the depths and the structure in between. Okay, done? Okay,
Thank you for Professor Fabrice, and we would like to give a token of appreciation to Professor Fabrice, and we would like to please Professor Widodo Budiharto to give the token of appreciation. And next we will move to the next keynote session. Thank you.